to this computer. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the first one was sum evens only. So the idea behind this, right, was that we were going to get a range start, a range end, and we were going to sum the even numbers in between those two numbers. So for this, right, we could just use a for loop. We could start off sum equal to 0. We could start at range start, end at range end, and check to see for each number that we move past within this for loop, check to see if it's even, add it to the sum. Any questions on this one?
No, this was
Feeling
fairly
good?
straightforward.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Moving on, that's sum evens only. Find the largest 3-digit number. So I'm gonna get some digits, right? Like a string of digits. And then I'm going to find the largest one. So the way that we can solve this is turn it into get the first 3 numbers, right? 0 to 3. That's going to be the index at the first one, the second one, and the third one. We're going to convert that to a number and let that be our initial maximum number. And then what we'll do is we'll start at 1, right? Since we've already gotten 0 to 3, we'll go 1 to 4. And we will just take these sort of slices, these chunks of numbers. We'll convert them to numbers. We'll slice out chunk by chunk, convert them to a number, and then compare that number against max num, replace it if it's greater than, and then return max num at the bottom. How about this one? Any questions on this one?
Why did we do digits.length -2?
Oh, because so you want to stop, right? You're taking 3 3-digit chunks. So what this is supposed to do is, like, typically you would stop at digits.length, right? But what we actually want to do is we want to stop when this slice, whatever I is, I plus 3, right? So like the 2 numbers after I, when those reach the end, reach the end of the string. So like in the case of like digits, right? I would be 0, and then the end of the chunk would be 2. So instead of doing I like is less than whatever the end is, you want to just subtract a few from that so that you can apply that the length of whatever your chunk is. Does that track?
Yeah, I get
Okay,
it now.
cool.
So this was basically like the recursion replacement example from our yesterday's class.
With a for loop?
Yes.
Yeah, more or less. I think the challenge of this one is to be able to chunk to use dot slice to, instead of just iterating traditionally and getting each individual digit, you're getting chunks of digits and doing things like accounting for length dot -2, as opposed to like building up a string one by one with the recursion. This is like taking sections.
Okay.
Somehow I missed that it was consecutive digits, so I made this extremely more complicated than it needed to be.
Okay.
I was trying to form a 3-digit number
Oh, wow.
a combination in there. This is a lot nicer.
A lot nicer. Were you able to solve that?
No, well, I don't really know what if it was working or not because all the tests were failing because they were looking
Right.
for these answers.
And you can't like console log it out.
I created a loop. I created one loop that started at 9 and counted down to 1.
Okay.
And I nested another loop inside of that went through the string
Fun.
to compare the numbers. And then if it, anyway, I
Yeah.
don't know if it would have really worked, but I spent way too much time on that.
Awesome. Yeah. Those rabbit holes are, they're tough. Cool. Well, moving along, Mad Libs. So Mad Libs, we're going to get, it's basically like I'm replacing these stars in with these words. And the tricky part is that when I get to the end of this array, I need to flip back to the beginning. So what we can do is we can set up a string final sentence. We can set up this segments, which takes in this sentence and splits it into an array and makes the checkpoint where it's like splits all of the words by this star, right? So it'll do this chunk and then this one, and yeah. And then what we can do is we can iterate through these segments, iterate through those chunks, and in between each one, add whichever current word we're on, right? So we're going to start off at 0. So we'll do this one at 0, then we'll move to potato, right? This will get bumped up to 1. So it'll add in this potato, and then we have this line of logic here where we say like if the next word index is less than words.length, right? Keep incrementing it up, right? So like 0 to 1 to 2. But if it surpasses words.length, then reset it to 0, right? So in this case, we're going to start off at 0. It's going to hit this. 0 plus 1 is 1, right? This has 2 elements, right? So we would go to 1, right? And we would use potato. And then the next time around, we would do 1 plus 1 is 2. That is going to be equal to words.length. So it's going to reset it to 0. So then we'll use Sean again. Any questions on this one?
Would there be any way to use are you familiar with the join method
Mhm.
where no matter what you join, it turns into a string?
Mhm.
Would there be alternate solution using that particular method?
I think the hard part about that would be being able to control which one of these elements you want to insert in.
Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
but good question. Yeah, that's a great question.
I have a similar question. I just want to know theoretically if this works. Can you do push, and then can you do like inside the brackets do dot shift like the array and cycle it or no?
So that you would like pop this off and then use it and then push it back onto this array so that you're like removing elements and then putting them on
Yeah.
so that you're like always using the first one. Yeah,
Oh,
you can do that.
You would shift it, yeah.
Yeah, you can do that.
But okay, the only problem with that was like I didn't know how to like cycle it, because it asked like left, right, left, right, left, right. That's the only problem.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I think that would be something fun to like try out.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, cool. All right, moving along. is prime. Here we go. Okay, so the idea here is that we want a prime number. A prime number can't be divided by anything besides itself in 1. So for this, we can use a while loop, right? What we can do is we can start off and say like kind of a basic case thing, like if number is 2, just return true. And then say, okay, get me my divisor, right? So I'm gonna get the square root of number, num times itself, and then I'm going to subtract down from the number times itself. I'm going to subtract down by 1, and I'm going to, how do I explain this? While divisor is greater than 1, num mod divisor is equal to 0. So if I can divide it cleanly, return false, subtract 1 from divisor. I think I read this wrong. Math.ceil, the square root of num, awesome, is going to give me a decimal. And then I'm going to put that up to the highest number. So like the square root of 9 is 3, right? Oh man, it's been a while since I've done any math that I didn't make a computer do, but that's right? Square root of 3 is 9 is 3. Cool. So if it was something like square root of 10, it would just figure out like the next highest numbers, like maybe 4 or something like that. And so we're going to start at that number. We're going to divide num by it to see if there's a remainder. If there ever isn't a remainder, we know that that can divide cleanly. So just use a while loop, and if it divides cleanly, return false. Subtract 1 from divisor each time. If it makes it through all the way down to 1, we can return true. Did that track what I just said? Did that make any sense at all?
Some of them in there are just like, there are things that we just haven't seen before. So
Yeah.
I don't think I would have ever come up with those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, it's pretty mathy. I think, yeah, I think that is a fair statement. How did anybody solve this
I did it with the for loop.
with the for loop? What did you do?
I did I equals 2 because I mean any prime number it has to be greater than 1. So I equals 2, and then I less than num, and then I plus plus, and then if num modulo I equals 0, then
Yeah.
false.
Yeah, that's what my approach would be. Start at 2, work your way up to the number, and then try to divide each.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we need to know it to how to do it this way? Because I thought
No.
this was I really didn't understand a word you said this one because this
Yeah.
one was so complicated.
Yeah, you don't need to know how to solve it this way. I think the way that you solved it is probably a little clearer.
Yeah, I try to use for loops when I can. I try to never use while loops. I mean, unless I really have to. Like, I think while loops are just complicated.
While loops are fine. I mean, I would encourage you to try to get comfortable with while loops, not because of anything like you have to know them, but just like they're useful, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. That's my personal opinion, but so did everybody understand what we just said and how we solve this?
Yeah, I mean, the thing was really, I had to think about like how a prime number works, like the math of that part, really. But yeah, I mean, once you get your head around that, then like coding it becomes a lot simpler.
Okay.
Yeah, I understood it after talked about his solution. It made a lot more sense. Definitely the math
Okay.
league.
Okay, cool, great. Glad to hear. Let's go on to the last one, nesting bird. So this is the one where typically, like this is the one where we're going to use recursion, right? So the idea here is that we have these nested arrays, and we want to iterate through the array, gather the just the strings, and then form them into one string, right? So some of these, the problem is that they're nested inside of these arrays. So our base case here, right, would be just letters, no other arrays. So in that case, I would create a for loop, right? I would create a for loop. I would get the current element. I would add it to whatever my like some variable here, return the variable at the end. The recursive case is if it's an array. So we can check if it's an array by doing array.isArray, right? And then what we can do is we can recurse. We can say, okay, if it's an array, what do I need to do? I need to call some function on that to iterate through all of the elements inside it, determine if they're arrays, and if they're not arrays, just build up a string. If they are arrays, call some function that will figure out what are the words inside of the arrays. Right. So what this will do is it'll call out to nesting bird with like this, right? It'll make another call within that call to I, and then it'll give you back bin. Bin here will get added to RO, and then we'll return Robin at the end. Yeah, how did this one feel? I think that when maybe this was handled in one of the recursion workshops, something similar to this.
I tried to use the method flat for this case, but
Mm.
it wouldn't like let me use it. I was wondering if
Yeah.
it blocked it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they block it. I think that they want you to specifically to use recursion on this.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. They didn't say it was
They
blocked.
didn't say. I'm sorry. I would say if it's something like, if you see like nested things, like you might see something's like, hey, this is a nested object, right? That is like a good call to recurse, right? Or nested arrays, to go through this like deeply nested array and figure out something. Typically in like coding interviews, that's a good setup for like you should recurse. Cool.
Does that concept also apply to, well, because JavaScript is more like object-oriented programming, then what you just said would be also true towards objects, not just arrays?
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm understanding your question, like the nested objects situation.
That is correct.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I would say like for JavaScript, like anytime that somebody's like talking about nested structures and how to like de-nest them, typically it's gonna be a recursion problem.
Recursion.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
There's only two data structures we need to know, right? Objects and
Mhm.
arrays, right?
Correct.
Those are the only times. Okay.
Yes, correct. Cool. Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing